Okay. So testing one, two, testing. Testing one, two, testing. Beautiful. A very blessed and pleasant good evening to all. Mind my excuse. I know I'm really late towards the 6:30, but there were some little technical issues that is bouncing around the place with Facebook. I know some of you wanted to know why I'm so anxious, but okay, okay. Well, the destination is Facebook, really, but it's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. And we're now trying with the new service. I think the new social media. It's what is it? It's in. I'm supposed to be broadcasting there now, but we're trying to get that done. So, a pleasant good evening to all those who are now joining. Share the live. Share the live. And yes, I'll be on tonight at this time and I'll take my time tonight. Wonderful. So, let your family and friends knows, let your colleagues knows that Dr. Matthews is on the air and we're going to have a fruitful discussion tonight. I would appreciate if you call in and be a part of this discussion because the system is set up in such a way that I'm really allowing you to call in. If you realize there's a pause on the program where on the Facebook is concerned, it's not our end. Our end doesn't have that problem. Basically, it's Facebook. For that live streaming, basically, it's Facebook. So I would like you to know that the problem is not here. So, good night to you from the GMS Live Voice of Democracy, and good night to you from the GMS Live Radio Guyana. To those who are joining in and now tuning in to our online radio, Black Love to you. Black Love to you. Oh, and the Black Love sales has started to progress in a beautiful way. Today we had some orders. It took me to like 30 something orders. It's pretty much good so far. And I would like others to join in and take part of this building of a movement and strengthening that movement through the GMS Live Voice of Democracy and the GMS Live Radio Guyana. So a pleasant good evening to you once again. Pleasant good night from Guyana to the Caribbean and around the world. Welcome you tonight to this, the GMS Live Voice of Democracy, live streaming here on the social media networks and also streaming live on the online radio, the GMS Live Radio Guyana. So before I start, I want to read to those who are now joining. Remember, I said last night there is an intention of a snap election, and the PPP knows that. They're trying to run away from that, but the snap election is here. So, campaign mode is in full swing. So, remember, they talked about the continuous registration that is supposed to stop on the 29th of this month. And I was advising you to take your 14-year-olds to get them registered. I'm telling you that because it's a need right now. Take your 14-year-olds to get them registered because in time to come when they're supposed to vote, they have already been in the system and ready to vote. So I want to read to you a statement, and I want all of you to understand what this statement is about. If you could listen in carefully, I'd very much be appreciated. The GMS Live Voice of Democracy calls on GCOM to immediately and totally withdraw the vaccination requirement for registration. The GMS Live Voice of Democracy and the online radio GMS Live Radio Guyana calls on GCOM to immediately and totally withdraw the vaccination requirement for registration with immediate effect. The GMS Live calls upon the international community, so as they say they want to preserve democracy in Guyana. I'm calling on them now to summons the People's Progressive Terrorists Party to withdraw the immediate and totally withdraw the vaccination requirement for registration. The requirement imposed by GCOM that citizens wishing to register must provide a proof of being fully vaccinated or a negative PCR test, imposing a vaccination requirement for registration blatantly violates the Guyana's constitution. Blatantly violates the Guyana's constitution. The constitution enshrines a citizen's right to elect and be selected as a fundamental guarantee to impose only a minimum of necessary eligibility and administrative requirements for registration and for voting. The Constitution never said, the Constitution never said that vaccination must be a requirement for registration. And this statement that I'm reading is also being supported by the People's National Congress. I want to make it absolutely clear. The vaccination requirements falls purely on constitutional grounds. The vaccination requirements the vaccination requirements fails purely on the constitutional grounds. GCOMs must immediately withdraw it on the basis alone. But the requirement is also abused in that it places many citizens in classic chicken and egg situation whereby to get a COVID-19 vaccine. A person needs a national ID card, but to get an ID card, a person needs to be vaccinated. GCOM Secretariat have obliviously given only superficial thought to the constitutional common sense implication of imposing a vaccination requisite for a registration. The PNC therefore calls on GCOM to immediately and absolutely annul this requirement. To those who are looking and to those who are now taking in what is now coming to them, this is absolutely disrespectful to the citizens of Guyana. This is what you call voter suppression. The People's Progressive Terrorist Party knows. They know that the snap election is around the corner and they're trying to suppress the vote now. To the younger generations who are now being registered to vote, and to those who've registered in the house registration pass to vote, they know that clearly. That is disenfranchisement. This is a voter suppression. This is what is going on now in this country. To those who are looking, this is a now an exact this is a now an exact unconstitutional requirement that is taking away the will of the people to vote for a party of their choice. You are taking away their choices now by asking that they present a COVID 19 vaccination card to register themselves. This is now beyond constitutional requirement. This is unconstitutional. And they give you a timeline up till until the 29th of March. The PNC, the People's National Congress Reform, therefore calls on GCOM to immediately and absolutely annul this requirement. The party has also asked its commissioners to vigorously pursue this matter with the intent of having this unconstitutional measure withdrawn immediately. Voter suppression is here, Guyana. It is here. It's functioning in this now democratic society as they so claim. What happened to all those people who refuse to take the vaccine? It is within a person's constitutional rights to refuse the vaccine. It's within a personal constitutional right not to take one. Now you're putting that person now you're putting that person under the health spectrum of what you call unconstitutional requirements. You're putting them in a circumstantial constraints, especially those who doesn't have the pay, who doesn't have the $15,000 to go and give Sheriff Medical Services or Sheriff Medical Center for PCR tests. I sat down here many a nights and I explained to you, my people that looks like me. I said, you see what happens? Now they're turning around to bite you. Because you know why? When they call to $6,000 to go see Beanie Man, you're turning up. You're turning up to see Beanie Man. And by the drove, by the hundreds, by the tens of thousands. You're turning up to go and see hold on, wait. You're turning up to the Kashif and Shanghai by the tens of thousands to go and see futsal and party and drink by the tens of thousands. A multi-billion-dollar enterprise in Guyana. Now they're turning around to say to you now, you have to provide a covert card or go take a PCR test because now you can afford it. See what I'm talking about now? They're using your own strategy against you. That's why we're talking about now the elections petition. So before I go on to the elections petition, to those who are now joining, this elections, this tonight's conversation, right? Let me read the statement clearly. The People's National Congress Reform and the GMS Live Voice of Democracy calls on GCOM to immediately and totally withdraw the vaccination requirements for registration. Yes, we are calling because it's an unconstitutional requirement. There's no requirement to prevent you. The Constitution didn't say so as long as you're alive and well can identify yourself, there's no requirement to prevent you from registering yourself, nor putting your name on the voters list to cast your ballot. There's no requirement. Then not only that, It get a little bit worse now. The elections petition as now and is now shows that the People's Progressive Party are the true riggers of the regional and general elections of 2020, March 2nd, the year 2020 that has gone. The elections petition has now shown that, not the courts. Alone go and quote Gavin Matthews wrong. The elections petition. And why the elections petition shows that? It is because Order 60 is unconstitutional. That's one. The recount shows the anomalies of the 47 ballot boxes that turned up on the East Coast. The same East Coast by the Enmore section, coming back down. Of the 47 ballot boxes that shows irregularities that could not provide proof of the votes being valid. Not somewhat credible. There's no credibility in votes in the Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. It's valid votes. So they couldn't charge Mr. Mingo. The charge becomes null and void. They couldn't find evidence in the charge for Mr. Mingo. They couldn't find evidence in the charge for Roxanne Myers. They couldn't even find evidence in the charge for claimant. For claimant Mingo and what's his name, Keith Lowenfield. They couldn't find evidence in the charges for those people. In the statement of evidence as provided, there's no evidence at all. Because there's been a declaration being made upon a recount of valid, not even valid, certified ballots and not votes. That is why it is being declared on a credibility and not a validity. So it makes the government null and void. They're a de facto regime. They're a terrorist regime. It has been a coup d'etat in Guyana for the first time. Irfraud Ali, along with Jack Dio, has participated in a coup d'etat. It was a coup because Jack Dio knows, and Irfraud and Anil knows, that it is no way by the constitution that they could have been sworn in as the legal elected representative of the people, for the people, and by the people. They know that. So we have a fraudulent regime, unable to find charges of fraudulent conversions in the election against Mingo, against Lowenfield, and against Myers. They're unable to find the evidence. They can't cook the cocoa price. So what is happening? The international community has no respect for them because they have not gone according to the constitution. They had not obeyed their own constitution. So that is why the advice is now snap election. That is why the advice is now snap election. There's nothing nobody can do right now but try to understand what is going on. Snap election is the way forward now. We need to prepare ourselves, and there is now a voter suppression by the de facto regime through Claudette Singh, the chairperson of the Ghana Elections Commission, trying to make a valid argument that persons provide a fully vaccinated card to be registered. That is a voter suppression. So I call upon the international community The same international community that is now putting the pressure on this de facto regime to put more pressure on them to allow Guyanese now to have their rights. Because as far as they're concerned, I ain't seen nobody coming out. So I got to beg the international community. With myself, I don't mind if I get charged. It's the thing to go now these days to get charged. Gavin Matthews is ready and willing and able to step on the de facto regime's foot to make sure that democracy prevails according to the Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. But I am not going to sit down and allow the People's Progressive Terrorists Party, along with its de facto vice president and its de facto president, to terrorize, oppress, and suppress the people of this country and the votes at large. I would never sit down to allow that. And the other thing is that the presidency, no, sorry, the Office of Citizenship within the ministry or within the office of the president is now registering or is now legalizing more Venezuelans. Yes, they're doing that. They're now legalizing more Venezuelans on citizenship so they can float the list even more. The list is still floated. The continuous representation or the continuous registration bloats the list even more. The requirement in the population is not as the list is about. It's a total dysfunctional registration and total dysfunctional voters list. They need to have a new voters list and they need to have a house to house registration so we can all know where the Guyanese are on the day of voting, which area that they're living, so they can properly be identified at the place of poll. That is what we need. So, to those who are now joining, elections campaign has started.